welcome back to the Jenn and Becca podcast. I am Becca, and this is my dear friend,
Jen.
We're so glad that you're here with us. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. We are recording this just a few days before Thanksgiving, and we're so glad and so thankful for you watching our show.
So the Evangelical Council for Abuse Prevention, aka ECAP, helps churches and Christian organizations such as schools and youth camps prevent abuse on their premises and in their communities. And it's a wonderful organization. Becca's worked with them in the past. I'm working with them currently to help establish policies and standards that will also protect not just children, but adults with disabilities, whether those be cognitive or physical disabilities. And this includes the elderly. So this is a really important organization doing important work. And if you are interested in preventing abuse in Christian communities,
I love the work that they're doing. The people that are associated with ECAP are fantastic. They just have a heart for children and for the vulnerable. They provide, I don't even know how many free resources at this point. So go to their website, check them out, download their standards, ask your children's organizational leaders the 50 questions that they have on their website for free so you can determine if they're doing the very best they can to protect the kids.
Yes, and it's helpful to parents too. I think that as parents, we are the front lines protecting our kids. And so for us to know those 50 questions and for us to know these standards, it really helps us protect our kids in our own homes, but also to notice when, say, there's some sort of vulnerability or weak spot or lapse at their school, at their youth group, at church, just wherever you're going, at the gym, in the child care section. If you know these things as a parent, you're going to be equipped to protect your child better and also help the people who are around you in your community protect your kids and their kids better. And it's just invaluable.
1,000,000%. So ecap.net/parents has a parent resource page there for you, a plethora of free resources. Check that out. One example of how their standards and that document of asking questions has actually helped me. I have twin 13-year-olds. One of them was doing fencing over the summer. And I was in the gym while they were doing fencing, and the daughter of mine that was sitting on the bleachers watching her sister learn fencing said, "Mom, can you come here? Her fencing instructor's asking me really uncomfortable questions." And so I booked it over there as fast as I could. And I'm watching and I'm observing. He was asking them questions like, which one do you think is prettier? Which one eats more? Which one do you think weighs more? Like questions like that. And so I sat there and I observed. And while I was observing, I wrote a really nice email to the head of the Family Enrichment Center that we are a part of.
Yeah.
And I asked them a ton of questions about their training, about whether or not it's acceptable for a male instructor to be alone with a class of 15 teenage girls, things like that.
Why is he asking questions like that? It's so weird. Even if he's not a pervert, that's just mean. Asking which one weighs more, which one eats more, that's mean.
Which one's prettier, questions like that. So I have my own thoughts as to why that is, but my husband went to her class the next day that she had class, and after I told him what had happened. And with fencing too, they have these uniforms that you need help putting on. There's buckles that you can't reach, and I'm like, I feel like this is inappropriate. There's no reason a grown man should be helping teenage girls put on their uniform.
Oh gosh, no.
So my husband went, and he had a nice conversation with this instructor. And now this instructor is pretty jacked. He's got tattoos all over his body. He was visibly shaking a little bit. And my husband was just like, "Hey, bud, don't talk to my kids without me or my wife present, especially when it has to do with questions about their appearance. What are you trying to get at with this?" And he was like, "I was just trying to make conversation." Ask them what their favorite. What's your favorite color? what are
What's your
you
favorite
doing
movie? What'd you do
for,
last
yeah,
weekend?
like, come on, making conversation about a teenage girl's physical appearance, now you're crossing a line. So
Yeah.
this facility gave him additional training, and I am now going to be teaching at their facility come January on how to
Nice.
identify grooming behaviors and patterns.
Good. Good job,
Yeah.
Becca. That's awesome.
So it's sweet to see how situations like this can turn around for the good.
Yes.
But that document from ECAP really helped shape my thought process in what I was seeing, what questions to ask. And so I just wanted to throw that little story out there as a way for people to kind of look at situations a little bit differently and use ECAP's resources to do it.
Yep, yep. And that reminds me too of that situation where that guy that we didn't know sat down next to my daughter when she was alone at the picnic table. It's just kind of like, I think like maybe 10 years ago, well, she would have been a tiny baby back then, but if that had happened, 10 years ago, same scenario, same age child, I think I probably would have just taken her home, and I
Yeah.
wouldn't have challenged the guy. But because I do have experience, especially working with ECAP, but also with lots of different abuse survivors and analyzing my own abuse when I was a child, I called him out, and boy, he was not happy. And
Yeah.
I think that's a confirmation though. When you start asking questions and somebody gets ticked off, threatened by your questions, because a normal person, they'll back off. They'll say, "Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. That was really stupid. I don't know what I was thinking." Or, I shouldn't have sat there. I just wasn't thinking about that. I'm sorry I made you uncomfortable. That's what a normal person would do. And so when they react in defense like that, or they react, they're coming from a place of pride. It's coming
Yeah.
from a place of pride, and they know that they've done something wrong and they just don't want to admit it. So, yet another red flag.
Yes, no, I agree. And usually when they act a certain way like that, and I think that they have hidden motives personally, but I'm not the judger of the heart, so I don't know. But I will be
Yeah.
the first one to ask questions and make observations and make sure that every child in my vicinity is safe. I don't care if it's mine or not. We are
Absolutely.
2 days away from Thanksgiving. I feel like it just ran up on me out of nowhere.
Done any of my grocery shopping, and I'm actually kind of nervous about it because you know how the grocery stores get like right
Yeah.
before Thanksgiving. And so I was thinking of dropping my kids off at grandma's house and going today during the day. We'll see if Jason lets me though. My husband Jason, he loves doing the grocery shopping.
Oh,
He's the
that's
one who
awesome.
manages. Yeah, he manages our budget, and it's funny because he always ends up getting stuff that I probably wouldn't have bought. I don't mean that in a bad way. Like he'll go and he'll buy like spices and stuff where I would have cut corners and said, "Oh, I don't actually need nutmeg. I don't
Yeah.
actually need," you know what I mean? And so, but he does a really good job. But he's working, unfortunately, and he
Oh.
works Wednesday as well. So, but we'll see. We'll see. I really don't want him to have to go to the grocery store on Wednesday though, because I think that will be hell in a handbasket. But so one thing that really ticked me off while we're on the topic of grocery shopping,
Yeah.
I'm scrolling through Twitter and I see this CNBC article, but then it says NBC. I guess they're affiliated somehow.
Maybe. I
NBC
don't
News
know.
article written by Jing Fang, and it says Thanksgiving dinner is historically affordable this year.
What?
Then you scroll
Says who?
down. Yeah. You scroll down and it says, and I quote, "The cost of this year's holiday feast estimated at $58.08 for a 10-person gathering, or $5.81 per head, dropped 5% since last year, the lowest level since 20."
Can we flag that as misinformation? Because
Are
that's
they
not
insane?
accurate. That is not even close to accurate.
Then, okay, this is what really ticks me off. If you scroll up, look at the beautiful Thanksgiving spread in the photo.
Yes.
You've
Yes.
got a large turkey. You've got, I don't know how many different kinds of vegetables. You've got specialty bread. You've got a homemade pie, corn on the cob. What the heck? are they talking about?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
That's insane.
it says the cost of this year's holiday feast estimated at $58.08 for a 10-person gathering. Dude, you're going to spend 58.08 just on the turkey alone.
They've even got wine in the photo.
This is just so not even close.
It made me angry. It made me angry. Like, I added up just the cost of my green bean casserole, my macaroni and cheese, and one pie is over $60.
So is this like black market food from China that they're trying to sell us right now? Because are these the people that are like the independent fact checkers too? Because this is not just
Maybe these are the people that are eating the cats and eating the
and
dogs
eating
in
the dogs.
Ohio.
Yes, the food that I see in this picture
then?
is actually cats, dogs, and quail.
Maybe instead of spending $30 to $50 for a turkey, we should just shoot a Canadian goose at the...
Yeah, I mean, America's
And by the
changing in
way,
such a way that that could be a reality.
yeah, and this is somehow supposed to be an average cost. That means that the cheapest dinner is even cheaper. Like, what? Maybe they're factoring in food bank food?
They'd have to be. I mean,
It's crazy.
how in the world could you feed a family? I have a family of 5 right now,
Yeah,
and
you can't go to McDonald's for $58.
no, we just spent. We went grocery shopping not this past weekend, but the weekend before for 2 weeks. We have enough freezer and fridge space for me to only have to go every 2 weeks, and we spent $800 on groceries. And
Yes.
my kids are like, Mom, when are you going grocery shopping again? Today. And it's not even been a full 2 weeks. It's been a week and a half. Not even.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so for this to say that it's going to cost $60 to feed, I mean, it should only cost 30, right? Because I only have 5 people in my family.
That's right. That's right. What are you even doing, Becca? What are you doing? Shopping at Whole Foods?
I know what it
You
is.
elitist.
I know what it is. I need to go shoot my own turkey. I think that's what it is. I'm gonna go do that right now, Jen. Goodness gracious, these people are ridiculous. I can't.
It makes me so angry. And it's just like, I don't know. I just feel like the people who gaslight the public with this type of crap are so privileged and elitist. Like, I don't think they've ever been grocery shopping. They're getting information from, I don't know, I don't know where they're getting this information
So
from.
Jing Feng, who is Jing Feng? That's the author of. I wonder how much Jing Feng makes.
That would be interesting to know.
She's graduated from the University of Toronto. She has her degree in humanities and social sciences and is a news author for NBC. Let's see, what is her net worth?
Assuming this is the same Jing
No
Feng.
big deal. She is only worth $1 million.
I pulled up 2 million, but I'm not sure this is the right person.
And then no, that one's different. No, but this one is the senior
Producer at NBC News.
Yeah, let's see.
Yep, at least $1 million.
Yep. She's telling us that the average American, I mean, where is she getting the average from? Because I would think that the average American's a middle class
And
American, not worth $1 million.
Yeah. She lives in New York, New York.
I have friends who live in New York and they cannot buy a turkey for less than $100. I don't know what she is talking about.
No, that's insane. Utterly insane. And it just feels like gaslighting, and it's so condescending. Like, it makes me so angry because, you work really hard, you're trying to feed your family, you're stressed about money, and then you've got some, and this is actually, I really think this is why the Democrats lost this election, because everybody knows that the majority of the mainstream media is left-leaning. And so we've got these crazy left-leaning people telling us BS like this. I feel like they think we're stupid.
Oh yeah,
because
no, they definitely do.
Store, I know for a fact that these are not the prices I'm seeing.
Yeah. Well, they think that we're so stupid and this whole thing is insane, and it takes us right to our next topic, which is Pornhub trying to dodge age checks by claiming it's not a pornography provider. I mean, pornography provider.
Yeah.
So they are trying to reclassify their business so that way they are regulated based off of being a social network or search engine. Literally the name porn, corn, whatever you want to call it, is in
Yeah.
the name of the business.
Yeah.
Are they gaslighting us and thinking that we're this stupid too?
100%. Well, to me, it sounds like a legal loophole. I mean, it's just, they're trying to jump through hoops to avoid getting sued, to avoid getting shut down, to avoid restrictions being put on their business.
Yeah, they said that the rules for these so called Part 5 sites mark the first phase of enforcement under the Online Safety Act, the landmark internet laws coming into force over the next coming months. So it's not like it's a coincidence that they're trying to do this now, right?
No.
Congress has been working to completely get rid of what is it? Oh, it's escaping me. There's a law that was passed where internet providers and search engines and social media companies are not being held accountable for the harm that they're doing to people, especially children and teenagers. And
Hmm.
so they're anticipating that certain changes are going to be happening over the next couple of months, and they're trying to get ahead of it so that way they're not regulated through the whatever by
Yeah.
the government.
Yeah.
And think about all the people that have been harmed by not regulating the internet.
It, well, especially when it comes to things like this. I mean,
Yes. You're
it
talking
should,
about like people being recorded as
yeah.
in the middle of an act of violence. And
Hmm.
then this company gets away with putting that assault on their website because their face isn't shown, or there's so many loopholes. They don't have to
Yeah.
do age verification because the victim's face is not being shown, even though you can tell that that's a child in the
Yeah.
video.
Yeah. No, it's grotesque, and it's not just obviously the victim suffers greatly, and that's the main focus. But the kind of people that want to watch this kind of violent, sadistic child abuse material, they are actively building up their own capacity for evil. They're
Mm.
actively callousing their conscience, numbing their heart so that they can then go forward and do those things to the people around them. And so it's not just the victim in the video. It's all the kids and the women and the people who are going to be victimized because this material was used to enable an abuser, to normalize perversion and evil. So it's not just one crime. It's like that's ground zero. And then you've got this explosion of evil coming out of that one event.
Yeah.
So I personally, if their entire business got completely demolished and destroyed and drowned in red tape, I would not be sorry whatsoever.
I would be rejoicing
Oh,
personally.
yeah.
I'd be
Yeah.
praising the Lord for dismantling such an evil empire.
Yeah.
Think about all of not just the women and children, but the men too, that would be spared violent acts against them because this industry is no longer in this scenario thriving. Think
Yep.
about how the abortion industry would take such a huge hit as well. Because when people are victimized in this industry and they get pregnant, guess what? Not only do they potentially want to get rid of that, but sometimes they're forced to get rid of it. Or
Yeah.
there's baby mills that happen as well. And people are
Ugh.
forced into trafficking. Like this,
Yeah.
the
And then you've got Planned
trafficking.
Parenthood
Yeah.
selling baby body parts. I mean, that's documented. That's
Yeah.
not even a conspiracy theory. That's documented from their own mouths on video. So it's all connected. It's all sadistic and psychopathic and honestly just creeps the heck out of me. I can't. Yeah, I can't think about it for too long because I just get depressed and angry.
Planned Parenthood stomach churning emails negotiating for fetus donations are exposed. And in these emails, it shows how they worked with the University of California, San Diego's campus to provide fetuses and body parts of these aborted babies for testing directly to the university. I can't. This is crimes against humanity. The
Yeah.
unborn is a developing person.
Yeah.
No different than a child outside of the womb who is a developing person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I know someone who is a friend of mine that I met on Instagram who his unborn child was aborted against his will. His girlfriend, for whatever reason, was not ready to have a baby, and she went without telling him and got an abortion. And now he's on a mission to find his baby's remains. He knows that they were shipped to a university for testing, and he wants to give her a proper burial. It just breaks my heart.
Yeah.
It's horrible. And no child should be deprived the right to live because of someone else's inconvenience or fill in the blank. Or ignorance or crimes against people. So the same people that are lobbying for abortion to be enabled everywhere are the same predators that are on these porn websites or creating this content.
Yeah. Yep. No, I used to know a woman who, I can't remember how many babies she said she had aborted. It was something shocking to me, like 9, 10, 11. But she had been basically trafficked by different men. And whenever she got pregnant, they would threaten her and say, well, if you don't get an abortion, I'm going to leave you. And, you know, she was a child abuse survivor. She's extremely traumatized. She didn't know how to survive on herself. And so she viewed these men, these evil men, these predators, as her caretakers, as the people who provided her shelter, her food. You know, she thought they kept her safe, you know, as long as she played along with their, you know, evil games. And, you know, and so rather than lose her home, she would abort her children. But surprise, surprise, they eventually abandoned her anyway. And then she got passed on to the next jerk. And, you know, so yeah, that's absolutely how these guys work. This is absolutely who they are. Anytime I encounter a male feminist who's pro-abortion, big red flags go up.
Yeah,
because
it's
just, you know, that's not about women's rights. You're not about girls' rights or you know, helping them break the glass ceiling or whatever. You're about destroying evidence, you know, destroying responsibility, destroying, you know, what could be your child so that you don't have to pay, you know, so you don't have to pay for them, basically, is my take on that.
It reminds me how deep predators will go to gain access to vulnerable people.
Yeah.
And I bring this up because there's still such a push for men, biological men, to be enabled to go into women's restrooms.
Yes.
And now we have Representative Nancy Mace, who is actively, continually speaking out against this. And she's posting on her Twitter account about it as well. And I'm just so thankful for women like this who are bold enough to speak out for the rest of us. A lot of us are too scared to speak out, and that's why Jen and I are here, because we're not afraid of anything but the Lord himself. We know that God is our protector, and even when we get ourselves into perilous situations, if it's not our day to go, we are good.
Yeah.
So I'm thankful when we first joined this family enrichment center that we're a part of. One of the first questions I asked them was, do you allow biological men to use women's bathrooms? And they tried to skate around this topic so much. And I said, I just need a yes or no answer.
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah. It's a yes or no question.
Yes. So it's crazy to me. Then we see Kaylee Triller. She was fired from her job of 17 years from YMCA, which is supposedly a Christian organization. I didn't know that they were a Christian organization, though.
Yeah, well, kind of Judeo-Christian. Yeah.
She was fired for opposing naked men in the locker rooms where her little girl got dressed for swimming class. She says, as a grape survivor herself. She was completely traumatized by this aggressively misogynistic policy. But back then, in 2015, she didn't have people like Nancy Mace or Megyn Kelly or Riley Gaines to speak up on a national level for women. They only had family policy groups, the Heritage Foundation, ADF, a handful of brave radical feminists, and the Posey Parker. I don't know who or what that is. She says, "It's been almost a decade and I'm still pissed. It's time to retire this conversation for good. Any man, regardless of how he identifies, who willingly inserts himself in women's private spaces without our consent is behaving like a predator and should be treated like one."
Yes.
That's the end of the discussion.
Yeah.
And it truly is.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. And it was just the entitlement and the failure to recognize fetishists. You know, these people, this is a sexual game to a lot of these people. Like, some of them are mentally ill. They genuinely, you know, maybe it started off as gender dysphoria, and then people were, you know, affirming their insecurities instead of, you know, affirming what is biologically factual. But then there's also people who, I mean, and everybody knows this, like, you watch, like, movies from the 70s, 80s, where they have drag queens. I mean, people know this is a fetish thing.
Yeah.
So letting people like this into women's restrooms, women's locker rooms, onto women's sports teams, it's categorically insane.
Yeah.
It's nuts. And say, even hypothetically, say some guy really was somehow a woman on the inside, whatever the heck, his right to self-expression does not negate my right to safety and security.
Yep.
This isn't like in any universe, even in a universe where this is a real thing that happens sometimes, this still doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense.
Some of the greatest nations in the world were dismantled shortly after gender dysphoria was a thing.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder how much longer America has left. Because if we continue to entertain this asinine thought that we can change a person's sex in any capacity, like, when did we just completely throw science and medicine out the window?
Well, and it's rooted in this philosophy that truth is relative.
Yeah.
That there is no such thing as truth. That there's your truth, there's my truth, and we all have to live out our own truth. And that's just not realistic. You know, if I told you that I actually identify as Napoleon Bonaparte, you would say that I was crazy. You wouldn't be like, "Yes, Jennifer, you are Napoleon Bonaparte. How is Alba?" You know, I just how is the weather in France? You know,
I would like to identify as a millionaire. I mean, can we make that happen? Where do I get the fake money to spend?
Oh, I want to walk into a really expensive restaurant, and heck, we should walk into NBC and say, we identify as people who should get paid $2 million a year. This is how we identify. Please.
Gender-affirming care. Why does it need to be affirmed if that's what you are? I don't know. As long as you're not doing it on kids. Like, I don't care what adults do to themselves. If they want to do XYZ, doesn't mean I approve of it, right? But it's not my business. But it is my business if you're going to be doing this garbage to children.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
That's where I draw the line.
It's ridiculous. I mean, it is understood. It has been understood for thousands and thousands of years that children cannot make the same decisions that adults can make. We don't let them get tattoos. We don't let them drink alcohol. We don't let them drive cars. We don't let them vote. But somehow it's okay to chemically castrate a little boy?
No, it's not. There's this family in California where the dad just lost custody of his kid, who's a little boy, because the mom in the court wanted to chemically castrate him and make him a girl.
Yeah. And the mom has been doing this to the little boy. She's been convincing the little boy that he's really a girl since he was 2 years old. That is insane. When my kids were 2 years old, they would walk up to me and say, "Hey, Mommy, I'm a dinosaur. Hey, Mommy, I'm a doggy." I didn't actually think that they were being literal. They're children. This is so dumb. It's so
Yeah.
dumb. And this is something like I honestly think that mom, if she's not mentally ill, that's predatorial behavior to try to
Yep.
convince a 2-year-old boy that he's actually a girl or vice versa. That's a level of narcissistic mind game that's so off the charts.
It reminds me of Munchausen syndrome.
Yes, very much so, where they try to convince their kid and their kid's doctors that their child has some sort of disease.
Wait until that
Yes.
kid grows up and he realizes what this woman has done to him.
Well, let's just pray to God that somehow, by some miracle, he is able to revert back to a healthy, normal man. Because, in the article that I read, it's a chemical castration, it's reversible.
No, it's
No,
not.
it's not. That's
When
why
has
it's called
castration ever been reversible? I can't go and get a new uterus because I just got a hysterectomy.
Yeah.
What the
Well,
heck
even
are
like
these people talking about?
Yeah, even if you get your tubes tied, say you get your tubes tied, they call it reversible, but it's not always. Sometimes they reverse it and it doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this whole idea that it's just like flipping a switch off and on, that's not based in reality. And that's not what they're finding with a lot of transgender youth who then try to detrans. They're finding that they can't be normal again, especially when you're talking about men who they've got, this fake vaginas gaping hole. And then, women who have there's a girl I follow. Well, I say girl, she's a young woman now, but when she was like 15, 16, she got a double mastectomy. That's
completely
insane.
healthy,
Completely
no
healthy.
tumors.
Nothing wrong with her.
That's like me saying, I don't like my left hand. It doesn't do as much as my right hand does, so I'm just going to cut it off.
Yeah, I identify as a person with disabilities, and therefore I'm going to chop my hand off.
Hey, I can't pay my bills right now, so I mean, it might work out for me that way. No, there's
the level of crazy and the level of perversion that this crazy is enabling is off the charts. And I really think that in 10, 50 years, we're going to look back on this with the same disgust that we currently look back on guys like Josef Mengele, like the Nazi scientist who experimented on children. That's the level of psycho nasty that we have reached.
I could not agree more. I've been noticing a huge, I don't want to say trend, but a huge wave of kids who are now adults who are coming out as detransitioners, like you were saying. And what they're saying is that the medical industry has completely abandoned them because there's no recourse now. For some reason, the medical industry did not think that kids who wanted to transition as kids, really groomed by someone to do that, because kids don't just wake up and say, hey, I want to have a surgery to become a girl when they're a boy. That does not happen unless they've been fed that garbage. But there's no recourse. They have no way to fix what they've done, and doctors don't want to touch these detransitioners with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah, because they're basically a walking lawsuit at that point.
Absolutely.
There's no way to fix them. You can't, I guess you can treat the symptoms. You can do different therapies. But, once a person's castrated or, given a mastectomy, that's not coming back.
No, this article from National Post that was dated October 1st, 2024, which was my birthday. So it's a special article.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, 2 months later. Thank you. Says a surgeon removed Amy's breasts the day she turned 16. She says, Amy, there was no psych evaluation, no mental health assessment before the double mastectomy to explore why she felt so unhappy and miserable with her body. When her worried parents asked the surgeon if their daughter was old enough to consent, they were assured that the surgeon had worked on even younger patients seeking female to male masculinizing chest surgery. Amy hoped her chest or top surgery would be the end of her problems. Then her mental health spiraled. Yeah. Now 18, in her final year of high school in Southern Ontario, Amy is reverting to her birth gender. She's detransitioning and seeking breast surgery to get her pre-transition body back. some form of reconstruction to emulate what I could have had. Like most provinces, gender affirming surgery is a publicly funded service in Ontario. Amy's mastectomy was covered by the Ontario Health Insurance Plan, except for only $3,000 in extra fees for chest contouring to sculpt the remaining breast tissue into a chest more resembling a male.
Uh-huh.
But Amy
Yeah.
said she was advised by her family doctor that she couldn't make a referral for breast reconstruction because it would be considered cosmetic surgery. It's not like I had breast cancer or anything, Amy said she was told. I guess the way the government sees this is that I chose this, said Amy, whose real name is not being used to protect her identity because blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So what they're illustrating
Horrific.
here is just, it's so sad to see that so many people are coming out. And I also saw that, where'd it go? Yes, the New York Post also said we were pushed to transition as teens. Now we're vindicated by studies showing kids grow out of their desire to become a different gender. So why are we pushing these kids to do surgeries when this is just a phase of their life that they're going to go through? I remember being a little girl and thinking it was so cool that boys could stand to pee. Yeah. And I remember being in the bathroom with my mom and saying, Mom, why do I have to sit down to pee? Why can't I stand? And she said, go ahead and try it and see what happens. So when I peed all over myself, I said, that's why. That makes sense. Thanks, Mom. I don't think I need to be a boy anymore. Come on.
Yeah. Now imagine if you'd had a psycho mom who was into all this transition stuff. Can you imagine? I mean, your mom was bad enough, but these women are insane.
No.
It's just
I can't even fathom. The person who's supposed to
I
care for you the most is the one manipulating you to think that it's okay to act like something that you're not.
I want you to go through surgery. Just that by itself, like, is weird to me because, like, you know, I've needed surgery before. One of my daughters has needed surgery before. My dad-in-law currently needs surgery for, you know, an injury in his back. But nobody wants surgery. Like, it's not healthy. And
people
I feel like
that
this is a
want
mental
surgery,
illness. Huh?
People that want surgery usually are drug addicts. And I'll tell you why. Because they give you some intense pain medications after surgery.
Well, there's that. There's also people who I think are just really addicted to it. Like these people that get plastic surgery over and over and over again until they look bizarre. There's something there's a mental like phenomenon that's happening there, and I think it might be related in some way to at least some of these transitioners because it's just not it's not normal to want to change and distort your body like that.
No.
Not healthy.
No, it sure isn't.
And, you know, it's like you said, I'm not going to stop adults from doing what adults want to do. But if an adult is mentally unwell or mentally unstable, that is evil to do these surgeries on them.
Do we not have like insane asylums anymore? Did we get rid of those?
Yes.
Why? I mean, I know that some of them were like really corrupt and they were abusing their patients and the medical side of things
but then there's also there was abuse, neglect, but also they're very expensive. You know, for the government to take care of all the mentally ill people, you know, and well, that was actually one of the reasons why. So my grandmother was schizophrenic, and she would get it into her head that she was the Holy Spirit. And so, you know, she would go through these phases where sometimes she'd seem normal and then she'd have a manic episode and she'd be literally schizoid. But my grandfather did not want to put her in an insane asylum because they were so bad. Yeah. They were so bad. It was easier to try to convince her to take her medication and keep her out of that, than it was to institutionalize her. And so nowadays we have hospitals for mental illness where you can get someone placed, but then they only keep them for so long.
Yeah.
It's not, they don't keep them until they get better, because they're not getting better. They keep them until they're sobered up or until they're off their manic episode, and their medicine is, they're under control for now, and then they release them. And then it creates this cycle where they're just coming back, to the suicide ward or whatever every
Yeah.
6 months, 12 months.
Obviously,
Yeah,
that's
it's
not
very sad.
sustainable, right? Like,
No,
that's
no.
not working. We have a mental health epidemic, I feel like, in America. And you see that these kids that are shooting up schools and whatnot, a lot of them are on psychotropic drugs. I would say the majority of them. I think you even wrote an article about that, didn't you?
I don't remember that, but it's possible.
Everybody check out Jen's Substack. She has tons of blog posts on there. It's
Oh, I
very
think I did
enlightening.
do something. Yeah,
I
I
thought
did,
you
but it's
did.
been a
Yeah.
while. I don't remember exactly what I talked
Yeah, there's a pattern of kids
about.
being on these medications that were pushed on them because they were hyperactive or whatever the case is. I just feel like we're not doing enough for people who do have true mental health. And instead of helping them truly, we're
Yeah.
affirming their mental health and calling it something else.
Well, there's also trauma. Like when I was a little girl, I was being abused. And so I remember wishing that I was a boy, because I thought that my dad would love me more if I was a boy.
Mm-hmm.
And, if somebody had talked to me about that, if somebody had looked into our family dynamics, they would have realized, well, there is a pattern of sexual abuse and domestic violence happening here. And that's why this kid is feeling this way. I don't know that I would call that gender dysphoria, but I do think that people they take little things like that. A child being confused, a child wishing they were something that they're not, and they turn it into this big thing, and then they subject them to all this basically medical experimentation and surgeries that are going to permanently alter their bodies, and they call that affirmation. It's insane. It's so, so evil.
It totally reminds me of Nazi Germany. And it's just like, I cannot get it out of my head. The experiments that they did on children,
Oh gosh. Yeah, you
it's
read that,
grotesque.
you will never, yeah, it will change your life. It's
Well, and I have twins, and to
yeah.
see what they did to twins or multiples it's gut wrenching. And I'm just, every day I'm alive, I become more thankful for the blessings that God has given me, because He made us for a time such as this, and He prepared for us to walk in good works
Yeah.
before we were even created. And I'm just so thankful that the Lord has blessed both of us in a way
Yeah.
where we're no longer with abusive people on a regular basis anyway.
Yes. Yes.
Sometimes we
Yeah.
have to interact with them, but it's at a minimal at this point. And we have husbands that love us so much and protect us and guide us back to Christ and remind us of our worth and our value and care for our daughters. It's so cool that we both have 3 daughters so well. And I'm just, every day I wake up, I feel like I'm more thankful than the day before.
Yeah, absolutely.
One thing I'm not thankful for is a Venezuelan migrant who crossed illegally into the U.S. has been accused of raping his boss's 14-year-old daughter while he was living in the family's basement in Colorado. Homeland Security sources told the New York Post. So we're being encouraged to house these illegal immigrants, but at what cost, y'all?
Yeah, when you have daughters or children, don't let strangers live in your home. I don't want to blame that girl's dad. I'm sure that he is torn up over this.
Sure, yeah.
Do not do that. I'm cautious even, and I don't want to make any of our friends or family feel weird, but even when I have just anyone outside of our family staying at our house, I'm careful. I'm just cautious.
As you should be.
Yeah, we have things set up so that, my daughters sleep in one side of the house and the guest room is on the opposite side of the house. And so in order to get to my kids' rooms, they would have to cross my room.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, I was.
And that's just visiting. That's just
Yeah,
visiting.
I was groomed and sexually abused by someone my family knew that they allowed to stay with us for a period of time. And I think it's very important that that y'all realize that stranger danger is a misnomer, that it's
Yeah.
usually the majority of people that abuse children are known by the child.
Yes.
93% are known by the child. It's
Yeah.
only 7% that are abused by someone they've never met before. So
Yeah.
it's important that you be vigilant to protect your kids even from the people that you know and that you trust.
Yeah.
We did not let our daughters sleep over at anybody's houses until we had established years long relationships with them and had
Yeah.
hung out with them hundreds of times
Yeah.
before we placed our children with them. And we had been at that point entrusted to have sleepovers with their kids at our house, and at
Right.
that
Just
point,
a
vice
mutual
versa.
trust. Yeah.
Families, and we have met hundreds of families over the years that have wanted our daughters to sleep at their house. You
Yeah.
don't, it's not even the family themselves that you really even you should be concerned about, and you should vet, but think about the people that come in that family's house also while your
Yeah.
kids are there. And
Right.
so even like the twins went to hang out with one of their friends at his house
Hmm.
a couple weeks ago, and I text the mom and I said, "Hey, are you planning on having anybody else over? Is it just going to be my daughters and your family, your husband, you, and your son?" And
Yeah.
she's like, "My mother-in-law is over too." And I'm like, "Well, I
Yeah.
thank you for telling me that." And she knows what jobs I
Yeah.
do and stuff and what my career is. And so she thanked me. She thanked me
Yeah.
for asking. And I don't think that if somebody looks at you sideways for asking these kinds of questions, you can raise an eyebrow at them, because you should
Yes.
be asking these kinds of
A hundred
questions.
percent.
And if
Yeah.
they have no hidden motives, then they will embrace your questioning.
Yeah. Well, and I've even given, I've even updated, like, we'll have some neighbor kids over, and, I'll text their mom and say, hey, just so you know, Jason's friend is over. We've known him for years. He and Jason are grilling chicken in the garage, and they're going to play
Yeah.
some video games later, but the kids are playing by themselves and I'm keeping an eye on them. And
Yeah.
it's funny because, when that's happened, it's like I think our neighbors are like, okay, that's great. Thanks, Jen.
Yeah.
But they, that's the sort of thing that I would want to know, because I don't want to
Yeah.
go pick up my kid at somebody else's house and suddenly realize there's a strange guy that I've never met before, with my kid. And I'm like, what's this? And it's just
Yeah.
awkward. Like, even if it's a safe situation, even if the guy is really, really nice, it's just awkward. And I need to know those things in advance. So I always try to give people the courtesy of letting them know, okay, this is the girl's uncle. This is, this is a friend from church. And he, that way that when the parents come pick up their kids, they're not like
Yeah.
blindsided.
Yeah, they should never be blindsided. I
Yeah.
was blindsided once. Quick story for you. My oldest daughter was, I want to say 6. She's 20 now. So this was 14 years ago. And this was before I was a child advocate. And her best friend's parents and me and Jason got really close. And they asked if Lexi, my oldest daughter, could sleep over at her house. And I said, okay, who's going to be there? And it was just going to be her best friend, her best friend's parents, and her best friend's grandparents. Well, the next day, I pick my daughter up and I see like beer cans on the ground, and I
No.
see like a bunch of cars in the driveway, and I'm like, what's going on? And I checked the mom's Facebook page, and there was pictures of her hanging out with her friends, drinking, while my child is in her care. And I'm like, okay, all right. So while she was supposed to be caring for my daughter, she got drunk with her friends that I had no clue who they were.
Yeah.
And then the next day, my daughter told me, hey, Mom, I was changing in my friend's room and her dad walked in and saw me. And I was like, okay. And how did he respond? And she's like, he was shocked and he closed the door and he walked out. I was like, okay, good. I don't have to kill someone today. I'm so glad to hear that. Like y'all have to be careful. It's
Oh,
not just about who you're sending your kids to. It's
yeah.
also about who they're inviting in their home while your kids are there.
Pretty ridiculous getting drunk like that. I mean, it, if it
Well,
was like one drink, a couple
yeah,
glasses of wine, that's fine. But
right.
getting totally plastered when you've got your friend's children at your house, I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's
It's
very
ridiculous.
classy. Very
Ugh.
classy. Yeah, I was, to say the least, I was not happy about the
Yeah.
Archdiocese of Los Angeles, who agreed to pay $880 million in settlement to clergy sex abuse victims.
Or,
This was ruled on October 17th, 2024, and it's a settlement for clergy sexual abuse dating back several decades, which the victims' attorneys say is the largest settlement with a Catholic archdiocese.
yeah.
The settlement covers, guess how many? 1,353 child sexual abuse claims.
Oh
Now,
my gosh.
they believe it's very important to note that
Yeah.
nobody who has been accused of such things are still employed by the Los Angeles Archdiocese. Guess what? I don't care. I don't care. I don't. I think y'all
Yeah.
need to do a better job at who you hire and
Yeah. Ordain or whatever they call it.
all the stuff.
Well, so, okay. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's tragic. And just the fact that this has been going on since the 40s.
Mm,
So we're talking about 80 years worth of abuse, and it's not just the abuse, guys. This is covering this up for decades and decades and decades and decades. If this is dating back to the 40s, some of these 1,357 children who were abused are really old now. They're like in their 80s,
mm-hmm.
90s. These are no longer children. This is tragic. I cannot imagine, like, as a Catholic, how this would feel. You know, you put money in the offering plate, you donate to your church, thinking that what you are donating towards is feeding the hungry, protecting children, you know, maybe some building improvements in your cathedral, your church. To have $880 million of your tithes and offerings go to this because a bunch of perverts were enabled would make me livid. And I'm not saying the victims don't deserve the money. They deserve this money and so much more.
Yeah.
But the fact that these things happen in the first place, and this is now faithful believers who are footing the bill for these perverts. That's
Yep.
what this is. That's what
Yeah,
this
and
is.
it's been almost 100 years, almost 100 years of covering up child sexual abuse.
Yeah. And the only
It
reason it can go
says,
back farther than that is because they don't have those records anymore.
and those people are probably no longer alive.
Yeah, they're dead. Yeah, those victims are not with us.
So I would estimate that it's much higher than almost 1,400. Think about all of the kids who maybe as adults even took their own lives because of the abuse. That's not
Yeah, they just
uncommon.
never came forward. And this
Never
is
came
just
forward.
the Archdiocese of Los Angeles. It's one
Huh.
city. Granted, LA is a big city, but I don't think it's even the biggest in the US, is it? I don't even know.
I don't
It's
think so.
probably in a top 5 or top 10, but this is one archdiocese.
And
I
it
wonder
says
how many churches that is.
once approved, the settlement payments are expected to be made in 2025 and 2026. Yeah. And it says that they're going to be drawing the funds from reserves, investments, and loans, along with other archdiocesan assets and payments.
It's amazing to me that they have that much money on hand.
Well, just think about it. All of the tithes and offerings that are put in by citizens, that
Yeah.
by the members of these churches, are now going to fund the settlement for child sexual abuse.
Yeah, so these are crimes that do
Sad.
not just affect the victims, they affect the entire community.
Yeah, absolutely. Think about the ripple effect from just one child being abused. Think about how they now view the church. Think about how they view family who maybe didn't protect them during that time. Think about how they probably are viewing their own children Not every person who has been abused responds like me and you have.
Yeah,
Some
yeah,
of them become abusers themselves,
yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah.
Oh,
Or just their dysfunctional behavior in general manifests in an abusive and traumatic sort of way, like alcoholism, for example. The ripple effects here are huge, and there are going to be people who even just read this news article and lose their faith in God.
yeah.
So it's just, I mean, there's no way to encapsulate how bad this is.
No, it's heartbreaking. Another thing that is absolutely heartbreaking is that Iraq is set to lower the age of consent for girls to 9, enabling Sharia law and child marriage.
Yeah. And for the record, child marriage is human trafficking.
Yes, 100%. Right now, Iraq, their legal age of consent is 18. They will be slashing that in half, allowing men to marry young children. And they're stating that this is predominantly being encouraged because of their faith. What does their faith say? Their faith is mostly governed by their prophet, Muhammad, who married a child at 6 years old, she was, and consummated that marriage at 9 years old. And they're citing that this effort to lower the age of consent to 9 will, what does it say? The governing coalition says the move aligns with a strict interpretation of Islamic law and is intended to protect young girls from immoral relationships. Yeah.
Like,
So
we traffic them so they won't be abused. No, that's not how that works.
So they don't want them to date a man to see if they want to marry that man as 18 or older. They don't believe in courting the way Christians believe in courting. They believe in name it and claim it. If that's the child you want, that's the child you shall have. You just
Buy
have
them
to
from the dad.
you have to buy them from the dad.
Yeah,
That's right. So
yeah. Yeah, I just pulled up a CNN article. Granted, this is from 2021, but December 2021. This is really not that old. The story of a girl named Parwana who was 9 years old when she was sold as a child bride in Afghanistan. Same culture, same uh, fundamentalistic religion.
I think it's really important for people to realize that this is not cultural. This is criminal. It doesn't
Oh,
matter what
absolutely.
culture you're brought up in. It doesn't matter what religion that you're brought up in. The Bible never condones child marriage. Never. You're not going to see that in scripture. The
No,
Bible,
no sane person of a 9-year-old thinks they're developmentally ready to, mentally or physically, to get married. That's utterly insane.
this is just criminal and it's being
Yeah.
justified by religion, which makes me want to vomit.
Well, some religions are evil. I mean, if you have a religion or you're a member of a cult that teaches this, your religion is criminal. If you're in a culture that normalizes this, your culture is disgusting. Not all cultures are equal. Some cultures are really crappy and terrible. And there's extreme versions of but there are cultures in which slavery is normal or was normal. There are cultures in which, heck, even cannibalism is normal. So just because this argument that, oh, it's their culture, oh, it's their religion is crap. This is evil. Like, it doesn't matter. Regardless of why it's happening, this is evil. This is
Yep.
absolutely evil and disgusting.
According to UNICEF, some 28% of women in Iraq are married by the age of 18. This is because of a loophole in the personal status laws, which allows religious leaders, instead of the courts, to officiate thousands of marriages each year, including those involving girls as young as 15 with permission from the father. I don't care if the father is consenting to the marriage, it is child trafficking.
Absolutely. The debt. And this is very, unfortunately, it is common in a child trafficking for the parents to be the original dealer.
Familial, yeah,
Yeah,
familial
yeah.
trafficking
That's
is
the typical
very common.
situation, scenario.
Yeah.
The
That's
Washington
one of
Post
the
just came out with an article. It says in the new Afghanistan, it's sell your daughter or starve. I guess their economy is so bad over there that people are selling their kids. It says Afghan girls ages 6 to 10 have been sold into marriage. 6. They're being sold into marriage. Not given in marriage, sold. Desperation forced their parents to thrust them into brutal adulthood.
Well, it's very similar to the children that are coming across the border. Every single day, it seems like I get questions as to, well, why aren't their parents searching for them? Hello, their parents sold them to
Yeah.
trafficking cartels.
Yeah. Yep.
It
Yeah.
says,
Or they were kidnapped.
and they're coming from countries where the economy is horrible.
Yes.
These
High
people
crime.
cannot afford to search for their children. They can barely afford to feed themselves, let alone travel the world to find their child. Just horrible. So,
So there's
wanted to
a
make sure.
video that I was trying to find it here. It went viral on social media recently where border agents encountered, here it is, a 2-year-old girl. It says, this is Chris Olivares. Let's see, he's a lieutenant with the Texas Department of Public Safety. He says, an unaccompanied 2-year-old child from El Salvador explains in the video she arrived in the U.S. by herself and that her parents are in the U.S., supposedly. The child had a piece of paper with a phone number and a name. But if the parents are in the U.S., why isn't the child already in the U.S.? Why does she have to be trafficked over the border? That makes no sense. Chris continues, this morning, Texas DPS encountered a group of 211 illegal immigrants in Maverick County, Texas. Among the group were 60 unaccompanied children ages 2 to 17, 60 of them, and 6 special interest immigrants from Mali and Angola. This is a stark example of the precarious journey these children make from their home country and how criminal organizations traffic these children across the southern border and further into the interior. He says, regardless of political views, this is unacceptable for any child to be exposed to dangerous criminal trafficking networks. With a record number of unaccompanied children and hundreds of thousands already missing, there is no one ensuring the safety and security of these children except for the men and women who are on the front lines daily. Despite the criticism over the years, the reality is that many children are exploited and trafficked, never to be heard from again. So far, the Texas DPS has rescued over 900 children. 900 rescued during Operation Lone Star from abandonment and human smuggling. Cute little girl.
So cute. Oh my goodness, my heart is broken. Do you know what it's taken for me to not go to the border? And like, I am so passionate about saving these kids that I'm even looking into opening a private membership association so I can do those kinds of operations if I want to. But that I digress. These kids are just being preyed upon, and the policies in America are enabling them to not only be preyed upon, but to be trafficked into America, which leads me to my next topic that just kind of came to me. Who's buying these kids?
You know,
Americans?
I think, yeah, Americans for sure. I think if we came full circle, I think we might have just come full circle. It's probably the same people uploading.
So I was talking to the head of the Me Too Moms movement a
Mm-hmm.
couple days ago, and she was telling me that yes, all these kids are being trafficked into America and they're being sold in America. One, who are they
Yeah.
being sold to? And then two, because there's such an issue, which we've talked about many times on this podcast about the family court system. She shed light on something that I am still stewing over and still trying to wrap my head around. And if y'all want to, you can look into the Me Too Moms reports that are being published. And that is that there has, as we've seen, there has been such corruption in the family court system by judges who have they introduced alienation to the family court system and reunification, which we saw with the Rachel Pickrell Hawkins case out of Colorado.
Yeah.
The reason that we're finding so many judges are placing kids with the abuser and alienating them from the protective parent is because, now this is what she's saying, and I still need to read the mom reports that she sent me and is public on their website with lots of documentation and evidence to support these claims. So I want to encourage you to look at them, and maybe we'll dissect them and talk about them next week or something.
Yeah.
But she said that she has ample evidence to prove that when a child sexual abuse case is presented to the court system and the child is placed with the abuser, it's because the judge is using the abuser as a mule. And I'm like, what do you mean as a mule? And she said to create child pornography, to smuggle drugs and weapons and other things. So they get to keep their kid, but there's a cost to them. Like, that sounds really conspiratorial. Like, that sounds crazy. She's like, then go read the mom's reports. Go look at the documentation.
Nothing would surprise me. I think that probably happens in some cases. My question would be, how widespread is that? Because I would think, there's definitely a lot of corrupt judges, but that's a very specific kind of corruption. I don't know how widespread that is.
Yeah.
Man, it just, the way that these sweet, precious children are being sold in other countries, trafficked over the border, and just disappeared into America, it's really, really dark. Really dark. There's some very
where
bad
are the kids going? Because you don't see these kids who were missing just pop up.
Yeah, you saw that little girl. She's trafficked over the border. She has what looks like a Post-it note with a phone number on it. Whose phone number is that? I'll guarantee you it's not her parents, not her biological parents. I think there are some cases, and I do not know why this happens. There are some cases where parents want to adopt a child and they literally buy them this way. I heard a story. This I believe it was a little girl, went missing, and then 30 years, so she was kidnapped. I want to say it was at a bus stop or a playground or something like that. She's kidnapped by a stranger. It's a literal case of stranger danger. But then she was sold to this couple who couldn't have children. And why on God's green earth that didn't raise red flags to them, or why they didn't, go through a legal adoption process, I have no idea. But, so that does happen. But generally speaking, people who go through criminal means to acquire a child, they're criminals. And they should not be trusted with a child because they are going to expose the child to other forms of crime, including child abuse material, trafficking. They're going to pimp them out. They're going to expose them to drugs. There's just a plethora of evil that these kids can get exposed to, and none of it is okay. And we've still got, on Biden's watch, what was it, 300,000 children missing?
It's over that. Yeah, I think the DHS report a couple months ago said 325,000. Just saw a report a couple weeks ago that said it was 475,000 kids now. And that is in addition to the reported 460,000 American kids that go missing every single year.
Yeah.
And that is a DHS report as well. Where are these kids going?
It's like an entire city of people missing.
A year.
Yeah.
A year. Where are they? People just don't just disappear. They go somewhere.
Yeah.
And there's so many theories out there as to where these kids are going. I know we have touched on some really controversial topics like satanic ritual abuse, and I know that's just a fringe amount of where those kids are probably going. But there's been reports in Florida of child labor trafficking, where kids are being placed in business operations in the middle of the night while we're all sleeping. They're being transported in really nice vans. They don't look like those stranger danger vans that your parents warned you about in the 80s. They are nice vehicles that these kids are being transported in.
Yeah.
And it's happening in the dead of the night as if they have something to hide or something, right? Because it's an illegal operation.
Yeah, because they're criminals, they're child traffickers. It's just amazing.
It's
It's just
I'm
horrifying.
I'm hoping that the turn of the administration will mean an urgent searching and rescuing of where these kids are.
Yeah, and a crackdown on the policies and procedures that allowed this to happen, because
Yes.
obviously there are loopholes that allow children to disappear. And like I read one article where it's like, well, sometimes the kid just gets picked up by their parents and then we forget to write it down.
Yeah.
It just like, well, maybe you should do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
For
maybe they're
real.
staying with family. But it's just like, the fact is, when these children are in the custody of our government, they have to be held. The government has to be accountable for that. They can't just, maybe they were kidnapped. Maybe they went off. Maybe they're staying with an aunt. Maybe they're staying with their grandparents. Maybe they're being trafficked. Like the fact that they don't know is completely unacceptable. And honestly, a lot of people need to be fired. A lot of people need to be
I
fired. It's
I
insane.
agree. There's a documentary that I just watched not that long ago, and I think it's called What is Treason? Or Is
Mm,
This Treason? It's a documentary by Ryan Matta Media.
yeah.
And it shows that NGOs are working and contracted by the government to get these kids from the border and transport them to sponsors. And it proves that these sponsors are not family members of these kids. Not only are they not family members, but they're not vetted. There's no background check. There's no
So it's like the
verification of
foster
address.
system, but worse.
Yes, yes.
Uh,
It's horrible. I encourage everybody to go watch it because it does expose how our present government is making an astronomical amount of money through child trafficking at the southern border. And I don't know how to put it any other way than that. And it's a hard reality to face and to stomach that our tax dollars are going for these kinds of things. A Christian program co host and daughter in law of Daystar founders Marcus and Johnny Lamb claims that she was sexually assaulted at Daystar by an unlicensed chiropractor her in laws had hired. And when she told her in laws about it, they silenced her. They covered it up, and she was pressured to hide her sexual assault. And I've never heard of them until this news article broke, but I also don't watch a lot of Christian
yeah, I
entertainment
don't
like
really either.
this, but they're an evangelical TV show. I'm not even sure what they discuss, quite frankly. I don't care. But the fact is that they are purposing to cover up sexual abuse of someone that they hired with their family member.
Yeah, honestly, and this is just a sad reality, but this is typical of a lot of the abuse cases that I have encountered in churches. They want the victim to stay quiet. They do not report child abuse. They want to cover everything up and for everything to be sunshine and roses and forgiveness, regardless of whether or not there has been repentance or accountability or truth. And so, unfortunately, this is part of a larger pattern. It sounds like so it's her in-laws. So this must have happened when she was an adult, correct?
Yeah, it says, according to Jonathan and Susie, the chiropractor who sexually assaulted her had previously lost his license because he allegedly assaulted a minor.
Okay.
TRR is not revealing the chiropractor's identity because he was never charged for that crime, apparently. Then
I
it
wonder
goes
why.
on and says Marcus and
Mhm.
Johnny, who are the owners of this program,
Yeah.
and the hosts of it believe the chiropractor had come to Jesus and was a changed man. So they invited him to Daystar to work on the family in the family green room.
Oh.
The green room is a lounge for on-air performers where they go when they're not in the studio.
Yeah.
Susie said, for a couple of years, everything went fine, and the man worked on her in the green room without incident. But then he started becoming more belligerent, and one day she said he seemed drunk as he was working on her. Johnny's assistant was normally in the room with the chiropractor when he was seeing patients, but Susie said that for about 5 minutes, the assistant left the room because she had to use the bathroom. During the time she was gone, Susie said the man violently sexually assaulted her. She says the assault was not rape, but he left her reeling in pain. As soon as the chiropractor left the building, Susie called Jonathan and told him what had happened. I believe Jonathan is Susie's husband, and
Yeah, I think so.
Jonathan is Johnny's son, I believe. Jonathan said his blood was boiling, and he immediately called Marcus and Johnny, who were out of town, to report what had happened. Jonathan said Marcus told Jonathan he'd handle it and instructed Jonathan not to talk about it. In the meantime, Susie said that it was all that she could do to hold herself together, knowing that the chiropractor knew where she lived and used to joke that he knew how to snap someone's neck in seconds.
Oh,
Not
yeah, he's a
scary at all.
chiropractor. I'm sure he can.
The next day, as Susie prepared to fill in for Marcus and Johnny on their show, her body revolted and she threw up in the bathroom. PTSD.
Yeah.
Shock. But Susie said she also knew what was expected of her, so she soldiered on and hosted her show anyway. Several days later, when Johnny was back in town, Susie said Johnny told her that Marcus had paid off the chiropractor.
What?
And he wasn't a threat anymore. Susie said, as she's recalling the discussion with Johnny, that Johnny said, we need to protect Daystar. And I want to protect you, so don't say a word about it to anyone. Susie said she dutifully obeyed what her mother-in-law told her and eventually got over it, quote unquote, and I forgot it happened. In 2021, the chiropractor passed away. But in January of this year, Susie said the trauma of the assault returned and she started to wake up panicking and sweating. What especially scared her, she said, was the way Johnny had gotten her to bury the assault. Susie said she couldn't help wondering if that was what Johnny had done to her 5-year-old daughter when Johnny had met with a girl to talk about her assault.
Wait, what?
Let me make sure I read that right. Susie said she couldn't help wondering if that was what Johnny had done to her 5-year-old daughter when Johnny had met with the girl to talk about her assault.
So, whoa, okay.
As we reported earlier in November 2020, Susie's daughter disclosed to her that she had been inappropriately touched. The girl then used her hands to indicate she'd been finger-graped vaginally and anally. But when Susie called Johnny to tell her about the alleged abuse, Johnny reportedly urged her not to go to the police, but instead to bring the girl to Johnny. After the girl met one-on-one with Johnny, she stopped talking about the alleged abuse and hasn't spoken of it to this day, both Susie and Jonathan told TRR. In a statement, Daystar denied the allegations that Johnny or Marcus covered up her granddaughter's sexual assault. Over 3 years ago, they say, in a thoroughly investigated and since resolved matter, it was confirmed that any allegations referencing sexual misconduct involving any Lamb family members were not credible and unfounded, Daystar said. Marcus and Johnny never covered up any type of sexual abuse perpetrated by anyone, nor would they ever tolerate any abuse against their granddaughter or a child.
That's bizarre.
Johnny Lamb is aware of an incident in 2017 that Susie Lamb raised involving a chiropractor, Daystar says. Susie had a long history of requesting the chiropractor at issue to work on her, both at Daystar and at her home. When Susie was treated at Daystar, a witness was always present as required by Marcus. In 2017, Susie Lamb reported to Marcus and Johnny that the chiropractor inappropriately touched her. The word grape was never used and nothing that would constitute grape was mentioned by Susie. The witness in the room at the time of that alleged incident denied that anything inappropriate occurred. Nonetheless, Marcus immediately released the chiropractor. No one paid off the chiropractor as alleged in your email, but hey, guess what? I bet you that a paper trail could prove if there was indeed a chiropractor that was paid off.
Yeah, they might be able to call it severance pay, I suppose.
Yeah, they sure could.
Yeah.
And then the article goes on, but it's extremely concerning and it's very it shows a pattern in the Christian
Yeah.
community, and both of us recognize this, being that we worked or currently work for ECAP, where Christians will excuse sexual abuse of any type because the perpetrator is claiming Jesus and forgiveness.
Yes, yes. Well, I am glad to hear that the chiropractor has finally met Jesus for sure. But yeah, this kind of thing it is. Unfortunately, it's typical. And I want to encourage, like, if is anyone listening, if you ever encounter assault, whether it be sexual or just violent sexual abuse, child abuse, don't call your religious leaders first. Don't call your pastor first. Don't call your church first. Call the police. Call law enforcement first, get it reported, then deal with anybody else who needs to know. Because I'm sorry to be the bearer of hard truths, but most church leaders, and this includes leaders of Christian television network, and Christian organization, they do not handle these things correctly. They will handle this in whatever way they think will preserve their organization or their business better. And for whatever reason, I don't know why, there seems to be this thought, and I think it kind of, at least to me, it was very typical, especially in like the 80s, but it's still kind of clinging on in a lot of churches and organizations, particularly where there's older people in charge. This idea that if someone is abused in your church or in your community, it somehow reflects badly on the entire community, or it somehow reflects badly on Jesus. That's not the case. What reflects badly on Jesus and on your community is when something bad happens, and instead of holding the abuser accountable, instead of protecting the victim, you silence the victim and you sweep the abuser off into another church or another youth group or another community. That's what really damages the credibility of the church. It's lying. Acknowledging truth, acknowledging that something bad happened, that's transparent. That's accountability. That's being responsible. Being responsible is never going to make you look bad. It's crazy to me.
What's crazy to me is that, and the fact that in the name of forgiveness, ministry leaders and Christian leaders are brushing such horrible, evil acts under the rug in the name of
Yeah.
forgiveness. How does that serve the victim and the survivor? How does that serve their family well? How does that ensure that they don't look at Christianity as less than what they did before that assault happened? Because they will. They inevitably will. And you're defiling the gospel by not coming alongside these victims and supporting them and reporting. You have a responsibility by law to report any accusations that are brought your way. If you suspect that someone, it doesn't matter if it's a child, that someone is being abused, you have to go and you have to report that.
Yeah.
And if you're not, you're breaking the law of the land. You're sinning against God. And you're not serving people well. You're actually enabling that abuser, that perpetrator, that predator to go to another church and to do it all over again.
Well, it's like, it's like the parable of the Good Samaritan. The what is it? The priest and the rabbi, they walk by the man who's beat up on the side of the road. But in the modern, Christian evangelical rendition, the evangelical pastor or church leader or TV evangelist walks by the beat up man, and instead of helping the beat up man, he goes and finds the robbers and takes them out to dinner. That's essentially what happens in evangelical Christian churches.
And you deal with it on a regular basis, being that you help the vulnerable almost as a mediator between them and the church so that they get the support that they need.
Yeah.
And I just commend you for doing that work, because it's not easy. It's not for the faint of heart.
It is.
It's hard.
It's very hard. And, I did it quite regularly before. I've kind of stepped back from it recently because it is mentally and spiritually wearing on you. And, it's very easy to become so cynical and paranoid. And so I found that I needed to step back, but I still do. on occasion. But yeah, it is. It is hard and it is a pervasive problem. And I really hope that those crimes that we read about in that article have been reported now and are investigated. It was interesting to me that in, I believe it was Daystar's statement, that they said that the claims had been investigated. I would just ask, by who? By who? Because, oh my gosh, I've had churches tell me, oh yeah, we investigated that. They had a couple elders' wives who have no idea what the heck they're doing go ask a few questions. Or this was the richest thing I'd ever heard. This gal on Twitter said that, oh yeah, me and my friends investigated this person's claims and they're false. And I'm like, you're an anonymous Twitter account. Who the heck are you? You don't even have, like, law enforcement, social services. These people have training and they have resources to go in person and investigate these cases. That's what's required. And ideally, they have objectivity. You cannot have someone in your own church investigating people that they've had potluck dinner with 100 times. I'm sorry, that's idiotic. They're biased. They're going to miss things. Even if they try, they give it a good, honest try to be objective. They cannot be objective. They cannot, because they either like or dislike various people in the case.
Jen, this gets deeper.
Oh no.
I just went on to Johnny Lamb's X account, and the first post posted 16 hours ago is the son of Daystar founders launches smear campaign when he is not named future president. And then there's an official statement posted from Daystar about how Jonathan, the husband of Susie, the son of Johnny and Marcus, are supposedly on a smear campaign against them because he's not being named the future president. I can guarantee you that's not why he's on any kind of smear campaign. It's probably has to do with the fact that they covered up his wife's sexual assault and don't care about his daughter's sexual assault.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. That got me on fire. Official statement from Johnny Lamb on the termination of her son Jonathan Lamb from Daystar and circulating rumors and allegations. It's amazing how people can, in your face, say that they are a Christian and they love people and they love Jesus, but then when it hits the fan and they have a chance,
kid under the bus. Yeah.
Yep, and they have a chance to live out their faith, they actually do the complete opposite. And that, my friend, is how you know wolves in sheep's clothing.
Well, and it's just insane. I mean, say what they're saying is even true. Why would they react that way? It just doesn't make any sense. Like, oh my gosh, I can't.
Well, it's all to preserve their image. It's all about preserving their image. It has nothing to do about honoring God.
Well, and what's ironic to me is it makes them look terrible. It makes them look really bad. So, but it's like I was talking to, what was he? Assistant chief of police in our local constable. I asked them, because my own church was trying to excommunicate me because I had named child abusers. Talking to this assistant chief of police, this was a couple of years ago, back when my church was trying to excommunicate me because I had publicly named several child abusers who were still openly attending church or pastoring or teaching in our denomination. So my church was trying to excommunicate me, and I asked this assistant chief of police, was like, why do they do this? Don't they understand that all they have to do is when they encounter child abuse, report child abuse? That's it. Covering it up makes them look bad. They think that they're protecting their brand. They think that they're protecting Jesus. They think that they're protecting, their reputations or their resumes. But this actually makes them look terrible. Why do they do it? And he said, because abusers are irrational. Nothing they do will make sense. They're irrational because they are abusers. And that's when it really clicked to me that these people that cover up abuse, these people that enable abuse enablers, they're abusers too.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
I want you to go on her X account. I would never encourage trolling, but her self-righteousness and her deflecting on her X account is jaw dropping. Okay, anyway, so everyone, thank you so much for watching this episode of the Jenn and Becca podcast. We will be back shortly after Thanksgiving with another episode. In the meantime, please give us a like, comment below, and even tag a friend if you're inclined to. And share. And if you haven't already, subscribe to our channel, please do so. Hit that bell button so you're notified every time a new segment, reel, or long form video comes out. That would help us by pushing our content to more followers, or potential followers rather.
Absolutely. Yeah. And hey, after Thanksgiving, we'll have to look over our receipts and see if we're able to stay within that $58 budget.
I can guarantee you. I'm not a betting woman, but I would bet on this that it is going to be quadruple that for Thanksgiving.
Oh yeah.
I should become an independent fact checker.
You should. Well, you can on X. You can become one of those people that do the reader comment. What is it? The thing where it's fact checking essentially. I forget what they call it on here, but
community notes. Is that it?
I love the community notes. They're frequently hilarious.
Oh, I didn't mean to follow her. Unfollow. Okay. Ew, sorry. Yeah. I follow Jesus alone.
Well, sometimes I follow people who I don't actually like, or who are just really, really different than me, exactly because I know that they're going to put out stuff that I'll be able to write about. I don't target them because I don't like, retweeting someone and chewing them out or making them look bad. So usually what I'll do is somebody will say something profoundly stupid or profoundly wrong. And then I tweet, I don't mention them, but I say this idea is wrong because, yeah.
I love your approach. Everybody go follow Jenn on X.
Jenn
and give me a follow too. I have 63 followers on X. But my Instagram is doing okay. I just pray every day that the Lord would keep it up and not completely ban me from the platform.
You're big on Instagram. I'm big on Twitter. I mean, together I feel like, we've got things covered.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks for tuning in, everyone. We could talk all day, clearly, but we're not. We're not going to do that to you today.
We're cutting ourselves off.
We'll see y'all next time.
See you later.